The day we buried Claire, it rained. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind of rain that falls in movies to match the grief of the moment. It was quiet rain, the kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just arrives and stays and makes everything feel heavier than it already is. I stood at the edge of her grave in a black suit she had picked out for me 2 Christmases ago, and I thought she would have hated this weather. She always said grey skies made her feel like the world had given up. Claire never gave up on anything, not even at the end. She fought for 11 months. Breast cancer, stage 3, discovered on a Tuesday in April, when we were supposed to be celebrating our 6th wedding anniversary. I remember she came out of the bathroom with the phone pressed to her ear, and her face was completely still, not shocked, not devastated, just still. And she said, "Okay, tell me what we do next." That was Claire. She never asked why. She always asked what's next. I loved her for that more than I can explain. We didn't have children. We had talked about it, the way young couples talk about things that feel pleasantly far away. We had time. We had each other. We had a house with a yellow kitchen that she had insisted on, and I had pretended to argue against. And every morning I woke up grateful for that yellow, because it meant I woke up next to her. After she was gone, I painted it white within a month. I couldn't explain why. I just couldn't look at it anymore. Her sister, Rachel, stood beside me at the grave. She was 2 years younger than Claire, and they looked so much alike it was sometimes cruel. The same dark hair, the same way of tilting their head when they were thinking, the same quiet intensity in their eyes. Rachel and I had always gotten along well, but we weren't close the way siblings-in-law sometimes become. Claire was the bridge between us. With Claire gone, I wasn't sure what we were to each other. At the graveside, when most of the other mourners had drifted back toward their cars, Rachel leaned close to me and whispered, something I didn't fully process in the moment. "She didn't want you to be alone." I nodded. I said something like, "I know." I assumed it was grief talking. A sister's way of honoring the woman they had both lost. I didn't ask what she meant. I wasn't capable of asking anything that day. I went home to a white kitchen, an empty bed, and a silence so complete it had texture. The first year was survival. Nothing more, nothing less. I went back to work as an architect. 3 weeks after the funeral, because staying home felt like drowning in slow motion. My colleagues were careful around me, speaking softly, leaving food on my desk, not mentioning Claire's name unless I did first. I appreciated the kindness and resented it equally. There is something uniquely isolating about being treated like something fragile. Rachel called every few weeks. Brief calls, checking in, asking if I needed anything, telling me small things about her own life, as though normalcy was something she was offering me on a plate. I always said I was fine. She always sounded like she didn't quite believe me. Neither of us pushed further. Around the 8-month mark, she started calling more often. Then she suggested we have dinner, just to catch up, just to be around someone who understood what we'd both lost. I agreed, mostly because it had been 3 days since I'd spoken a full sentence, out loud to another human being. We met at a small Italian place near my office. I expected awkwardness. I expected the long pauses that had defined our phone calls. Instead, something shifted. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the simple relief of sitting across from someone who didn't need me to perform being okay. Rachel talked about Claire without tiptoeing, and I found myself talking too, really talking. Not the polished grief I'd been presenting to the world, but the actual ragged thing underneath it. I told her about the morning after Claire's diagnosis, when I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for 40 minutes because I couldn't figure out how to walk back into normal life. She told me that Claire had called her from the bathroom that same night and cried for an hour, then made Rachel promise not to tell me because she didn't want me to see her scared. "She was always protecting you," Rachel said softly. "I was supposed to be protecting her," I said. "That's exactly what she knew you'd say. That's why she didn't let you." Something about that broke open in me, in a way that months of silence hadn't managed to. I didn't cry, not there, not that night, but something moved, something that had been locked settled slightly loose. We started having dinner more regularly, every few weeks then every week. It felt uncomplicated in a way I hadn't expected. Rachel was funny in a dry, sideways way that reminded me of Claire but was also entirely her own. She was a high school English teacher, passionate about books I'd never read, opinionated about things I'd never considered. I found myself thinking about our conversations during the week in between, not with guilt, just with something that felt cautiously like looking forward. I told myself it was friendship. I told myself it was grief, shared and processed between two people who had loved the same woman. I wasn't sure I was telling myself the truth. 14 months after Claire's funeral, Rachel came to my house for the first time. She had offered to help me sort through some of Claire's things I still hadn't been able to touch. Boxes in the spare room, a closet I kept closed. I had finally said yes. It felt like the right time, or at least the least wrong time. We worked quietly for most of the afternoon, folding things, labeling boxes, occasionally stopping to hold something up and share a memory. A sweater Claire had bought on a trip to Vermont, a collection of pressed flowers she'd kept from our first anniversary hike. A coffee mug that said "I'm fine" in tiny letters that Rachel and I both laughed at for longer than was probably reasonable. Then Rachel went still. She was holding a small envelope, cream-colored, sealed, with my name written on the front in Claire's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. Claire had beautiful handwriting, deliberate and slightly slanted, like she was always leaning toward something. My name on that envelope looked the way it had looked on birthday cards, on grocery lists she'd tucked into my jacket pocket, on the note she'd left on my pillow. The morning she told me she was in love with me for the very first time. "I've been holding on to this," Rachel said quietly. "She gave it to me 8 months before she died. She told me when to give it to you." The room went very quiet. "When?" I asked. Rachel looked at me with an expression I couldn't entirely read. "She said, when you're ready. She said I would know." A pause. "I think I know." I sat down on the edge of the bed. My hands weren't entirely steady when I took the envelope. "Before I open this, before I tell you what was inside, I need you to stay with me, because what Claire wrote in that letter is the kind of thing that doesn't land right unless you understand everything that came before it, everything she carried, everything she planned in silence while the rest of us were just trying to get through the day. If you've ever loved someone who loved you so completely they thought about your future even while they were losing their own, then you already know this feeling. You already know what it is to be undone by someone's kindness. Stay with me. Watch until the end. And if this story finds something in you, please subscribe. Because every story I tell is for people who feel things deeply, and you are exactly that person. Her letter was 4 pages long. She started by telling me she was sorry, not for dying, which she said was not something she was choosing, but for leaving me with a kitchen I would probably hate and a closet full of things I wouldn't know what to do with. That made me laugh, which I think was her intention. Then she said this: "I know you, Daniel. I know that after I'm gone, you will be good to everyone around you and terrible to yourself. I know you will work too much and sleep too little and convince yourself that being numb is the same as being okay. I know you will tell yourself you are fine until the word loses all meaning. I know this because you are the most loving and the most stubborn person I have ever met, and I have been in love with you since the moment you argued with me about the color of our kitchen and then had it painted yellow 3 days later without saying a word. I'm not writing to tell you to move on. That's not a thing I believe in. What I believe in is moving forward, which is different, because moving forward means you take me with you. You always take me with you. I'm writing to tell you about Rachel." My breath stopped. "I know what you're thinking. I know the guilt that's already climbing up your chest. Put it down. I am asking you, I am telling you, to put it down. Rachel is the only person in the world I trust to love you the way you deserve after I'm gone. Not because she's my sister, because she's Rachel, because I have watched her for 32 years and I know exactly what she is made of, and what she is made of is the same thing that will hold you together when nothing else can." I didn't say anything to her. I only gave her this letter and asked her to deliver it when she felt the time was right. The rest was always going to be yours, both of yours, Daniel, my love, my stubborn yellow kitchen too much working love. You are allowed to be happy. You are not betraying me by living. You are honoring me by refusing to disappear. I will always be the love of your life. Nothing changes that. But the love of your life doesn't have to be the last love of your life. Go forward, take me with you, and please, for the love of everything, find someone who makes you eat breakfast. I sat on that bed for a long time. Rachel sat beside me, not reading the letter. She told me later she had never opened it, had carried it for over a year without knowing what was inside. She sat beside me and didn't speak, and I didn't speak, and the late afternoon light moved slowly across the floor. Finally I said, "She was always the smartest person in any room." Rachel let out a breath that was almost a laugh, almost a sob. She really was. "She knew," I said. "She knew before either of us did." "She always knew everything," Rachel said softly. "She just had the patience to wait until the right time." I folded the letter carefully. I held it for a moment. This last, impossible gift from the woman I had loved completely, who had loved me back so thoroughly that she had thought to plan for my happiness after her own was gone. There are not words large enough for that kind of love. There are not words large enough for what it is to be known, that completely by another person. I looked at Rachel. She was looking at me with Claire's eyes, dark, steady, and full of something that had been building quietly for a very long time. "She made you wait a year," I said. 14 months, Rachel said. She was specific. Of course she was. Neither of us said anything after that for a long moment. Then Rachel reached over and covered my hand with hers. Not dramatically. Not as a declaration, just quietly. The way you reach for something you've been careful with and finally decide to hold. I turned my hand over and held hers back. Outside the sky was clear.
No grey, no rain.
Just the particular gold of late afternoon in early autumn, falling through the window of a room, full of folded memories and one cream-coloured letter and two people who had both been loved, more carefully than they ever knew, by the same extraordinary woman. I thought about Claire. I thought she would be insufferably pleased with herself right now, and for the first time in 14 months, the thought of her made me smile before it made me ache. That felt like something. That felt quietly and completely like beginning. Some people love you while they're here, and some people love you so deeply, so deliberately, that they find a way to keep loving you even after they're gone. Claire was that kind of person. She always was.